Hello, everyone. Welcome to Start the Week with Spencer. This is our weekly webinar here at Doman International, where we take the hardest questions from parents of children with special needs, and if we can, give them answers. So, whether you are joining us right now on Facebook, YouTube, or Instagram, we want to take your questions. We'd love to get to them. So go ahead and type them into the comments box, and we will get to them in order. Today, we've got a special guest with us. It's Melissa Doman. Melissa is the Mobility Director at Doman International. She has over 15 years of experience teaching parents from around the world how to help their special needs children learn to move. How do you help a child who's immobile? Maybe they've been diagnosed with developmental delay or cerebral palsy, or maybe they have a genetic condition like Down syndrome. How do you help that child learn to walk, run, skip, jump? So that is what Melissa does on a daily basis, teaching families. Melissa is also an expert in sleep and helping children learn how to sleep independently and through the night. So if you've got questions about mobility development or sleep, I'm sure Melissa will be happy to take them. Melissa, thanks so much for joining us.
Thank you for having me.
I should probably also say Melissa is my wife, just in case anyone's wondering what the relationship is. So everyone, please go ahead and start typing your questions into the comments box, and we will get to them in order. Melissa, I'll start off with a question that was sent in from a mom who said that she couldn't attend today because her child had a doctor's appointment. She said, and I'll pull it up on the screen. She said, "I would love it if you could talk about mouth breathing, sleep, and mobility." Those are three really big topics.
How much time do we have?
Yeah. This mom, Melissa, has a child with Down syndrome. So just to give you maybe a little bit of context with maybe the mouth breathing question. But maybe, Melissa, could you start off by talking about how those three things maybe relate to one another? Are they interconnected?
Yeah, definitely. So, I think, first of all, mouth breathing is a very common issue in the population of kids that we work with, including kids with trisomy 21, but it's kind of irregardless of diagnosis that we see this very, very, very often. And mouth breathing can be a sign that there might be something like swollen tonsils or adenoids. There's an underdevelopment of, the jaw and the facial structure, right? It can be a sign of underlying breathing issues like sleep apnea and stuff like that. And some people will mouth breathe at night. They have no idea, except maybe if they have a spouse or or whatever to tell them. But a lot of people might mouth breathe and seemingly seem okay the next day. But for a lot of our kids on the program, a lot of parents will tell us that they notice their child's a lot more tired. They might see dark circles under the eyes. Their child just doesn't quite have the stamina they should have at their age level. And mouth breathing in particular can be an issue with regards to sleep, because there's a consistent disruption of your sleep cycles, right? So if you're mouth breathing, what happens is that the throat actually closes a little bit. So you're not getting the full deep breathing that you should at night to stay asleep. And depending on the child or how severe the mouth breathing is, like I said, it can cause disruptions at night. And a lot of kids who get sleep studies done, that's one of the things they're checking, how many disruptions are happening in a sleep cycle. Now, I've known certain kids with trisomy 21 who have been diagnosed with sleep apnea, and they might only have one or two disruptions in an hour. There are some kids where it's way, 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 way more than that. But it can definitely affect overall sleep quality and how restful your child's sleep is. And, what I always talk about with our Doman families is that the brain needs stimulation. It needs, oxygenation, but it also needs sleep. And sleep is really, really important to solidify all the things our kids are learning throughout the day. I mean, it's the brain's time to spring clean, get things organized so it's like fresh and ready to go the next day. So even something as what seems fairly minor as mouth breathing, if that could be disrupting that process, it means that your child may not be having that really key time to solidify new skills and you know like I said, start that day fresh, the next day fresh and ready to go. And from a mobility standpoint, I kind of touched on this too. Like, kids who mouth breathe, what's the problem is that they're not able to really build up enough nitric oxide in their system, which is like what we need to really, progress more in our mobility and to do bigger things and to do things faster and more intensely. So if we're mouth breathing at night, already your child's waking up without that nitric oxide concentration. So again, that's where they seem maybe kind of tired, their stamina is a bit low. But for us to be able to progress to higher levels of mobility, we need to be able to regulate our breathing better. And again, mouth breathing is not really the best way to be regulating our breathing. I guess you could say it that way. Does that
Yeah.
answer?
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, that's very helpful. And then, what's interesting about sleep is that it's really gotten to the point for me, especially when I'm speaking to children who might be hyperactive, maybe they have an autism or ADHD diagnosis, when they become dysregulated. So parents might say, my child right now is, seems to have regressed. Their behavior got worse. They're not talking as much. They're engaging in more stimming, whatever it is. My first question now is, how's the sleep? Because so often those children are chronically sleep deprived.
Yeah.
Could you just talk a little bit about how much should children be sleeping?
Yeah, it's a great point. And I think for those families out there who are watching this and who maybe are new to Doman, what I teach families about sleep and that kind of hyperactivity and our kids who are typically diagnosed as autism or ADHD, the area of the brain that dictates sleep and the area of the brain that dictates balance and coordination, sensory perception, language, behavior, etc., they're next door neighbors. So if one thing's off, the other thing's going to be off. If the other thing's off, it's going to affect the other neighbor. And it like we just get into this really, really, really vicious cycle of like sleep deprivation, the sensory stuff is out of control, all of that. And I think the biggest myth about this population of kids on the spectrum and kids with ADHD is like, well, they already have so much energy. They don't need that much sleep. And the fact is really, no, these kids are, like you said, Spencer, really chronically sleep deprived. And these are the symptoms of that sleep debt and not getting adequate rest. So to answer your question, like, I would say for most kids, like at a minimum, they need 10 hours a night, if not way more than that. Like even kids who are, considered like lower on the sleep scale because of their diagnosis, a lot of times those kids, when I work with them, all of a sudden now they're getting 10 hours, 11 hours, 12 hours of sleep at night when they were only getting half of that before. And nothing has changed other than we've just taught that kid how to sleep really, really well. Oh, sorry, Spencer. I hate to interrupt. I'm not hearing you.
Can you hear me now?
Yes. Yeah.
Yeah, sorry. I muted myself because there's a siren right outside my door. So anyway, so we started to have a lot of questions coming in on Instagram. So I want to get through them kind of one at a time because we're already falling behind. So the first question comes from Sandra, and Sandra says, "Hi, Melissa. I'm doing the Doman Method. Do I have to do another program of primitive reflexes to integrate it with the Doman method. So she's basically asking, does she have to learn about primitive reflexes in addition to the Doman method?
Okay. Well, my short answer to that, it doesn't hurt. Okay. It doesn't hurt. I, I do feel that, like, for the families who have come to us and who have done some primitive reflex integration work, in my experience, purely doing reflex integration is not going to get your kid walking and running and stuff like that. Like, there's some really, really core important work that you have to do. But I look at primitive reflex integration work as a way to, like, patch up the little cracks and holes in the foundation. So again, like, Doman overall is going to be way, way, way more effective. But again, like, I feel integrating integrating some reflex work into your Doman program can be really helpful. It's just a matter of picking and choosing the right kind of reflexes depending on where your child is in their mobility and what your specific goals are for your child as well. Like, and that I'm saying that just because there's dozens and dozens and dozens of primitive reflexes. And I've found we get the best results when we focus on the ATNR reflex, the asymmetrical tonic neck reflex, and the symmetrical tonic neck reflex. And both of these are very, very, very important for crawling and creeping on hands and knees. So my answer is, like I said, it doesn't hurt anything. Certainly as a special needs parent, it's good to know and inform yourself on reflex integration. And as I said, it can work really, really well in tandem with a Doman program, but we have to pick and choose and make sure we're picking the right ones.
Yeah, and to Melissa's point, Melissa mentioned the ATNR reflex. Our physical staff teach certain exercises that can be done at home at appointments if a child needs it to stimulate and improve that ATNR reflex. So we do integrate, Sandra, certain reflexes with our program, reflexes that we found to be helpful for children. I think that my advice would be it depends a little bit on where you are in your kind of Doman method life cycle, if that makes sense. So if you're brand new, like you're coming for an appointment or you just came for an appointment, I would probably say hold off. Like, come for your appointment, get your program, start implementing your Doman method program. Because as Melissa said, we don't often find that the primitive reflexes on their own really achieve major physical milestones. So now, if you've been on the program for a while, you've come for multiple appointments, you have a staff coach, I would talk to your staff coach about it, okay, yeah. and get their feedback. All right, we've got a question here, Melissa, from Haley. And Haley is asking, what are your thoughts on melatonin?
Okay. All right. Soapbox is coming out. No, I'm kidding. So look, the short of it is, melatonin, I feel, is a tactic and a move that doctors make to just try and get special needs parents out of their office sooner. I feel it's a, oh, and you're coming for an appointment in August. Yay. Okay. But very often it's used as like the first step when trying to treat sleep issues for kids with special needs. But a lot of times, like I said, it's just like the doctor really doesn't know what to do about it. So they're like, here, just melatonin, like, come on, just get out of my office. Now in my experience, and at this point, I've probably coached like close to 700 families of kids with special needs, like through the sleep process. A lot of times the melatonin is just masking a deeper issue, which is the child doesn't really learn their own good quality sleep skills yet. But number two, the child from a nutritional standpoint is not really getting the things that they need in order to create melatonin naturally. So, for a lot of kids that I've worked with, they're extremely picky eaters, which means that they're not getting the calcium, the vitamin B6, the tryptophan, et cetera, that their body needs to naturally produce melatonin. So, and a lot of times when parents have been told to give their child melatonin, and these are the families that I've talked to, and they are coming to me because the sleep issue is still not solved. But, half of the time it doesn't do anything. The other half of the time it makes things worse. So like their kid completely knocks out, at bedtime, but then 3-4 hours later, they're up and like ready to party. And, that's it, game over. The day's starting at 2 a.m. And, with melatonin, it, like I said before, it's like the first step for the allopathic or the doctor's treatment for the sleep issues, because they start with melatonin, then they up the dose, and then it becomes prescription medication, so guanfacine, clonidine, and then it becomes the sedatives, and it just goes on and on and on and on and on from there, when really, again, we're not getting down to the root issue. There's usually a nutritional deficiency, and the child hasn't really yet learned their own good sleep quality, good quality sleep skills yet. So, now that being said, if there are parents out there who are absolutely like at like red level desperation and they just need to like plug a hole in the boat right now, okay, like that's okay. And if you're using melatonin, that's okay as well. But if you've used melatonin or you've been hesitant about it, like you want to be thinking, is there another root cause issue that I should be looking at first before I go to melatonin? And again, in those close to 700 families that I've worked with, I can maybe say 2 families ever I said, get them on melatonin. And that was really just because the kid had night and daytime flipped. So they were sleeping all day and then up all night long. So we used melatonin just to try and like anchor down, this is when nighttime is, so that everything else that's spinning around it starts to settle. But for every child that I work with, as long as it's parents' goal as well, my goal is to get them off the melatonin completely. And that's just because there's no like strong clinical evidence of this yet. But for a lot of sleep coaches and people in the sleep, scape, I guess you could say. The biggest concern is that for all these kids who are getting put on melatonin sooner, the big concern is that it fatigues the pineal gland in the brain. The brain gets used to this kind of fake boost of melatonin in the system, and then the pineal gland just gets lazy and it stops producing it on its own. So we have to, and again, there's no clinical evidence, but there's also no clinical evidence. So it's better to plan, maybe let's try and hold off on melatonin as long as we can for those reasons.
All right, Melissa. Well, we've got another question here from Swati. This is on Instagram. And Swati is asking, do you have a center or team in India?
Okay. Yeah, sure. I can answer that question. We
take whatever question is sent in,
Cool. All right. Great. So yes, I mean, we do have a team in India. We do have a center in India. And I was joking because Spencer's usually on this trip. I'm not on the India trip most of the time. But yes, we do have a team there. We do have a center there, and Spencer is one of the staff that will travel to India to go see our families in that region. And I think our next round of appointments is the week of May 12th in India. And we typically see families in Bangalore or Bengaluru. Sorry, I can't remember the new name now. Apologies. I'll educate myself. But we're there in Bengaluru, and then we're also in the New Delhi area as well, seeing families.
Yeah, so we see families basically every May and November. We do, by the way, because I know we have a couple Indian parents watching right now, mark your calendars, on February 3rd, we're doing this webinar especially for Indian parents. We're doing like a Start the Week with Spencer special Indian edition, where I'm going to have our regional director in India, Jagjit Kaur, is going to join us. And we're also going to have a mom who's doing the Doman Method program with her child join us and talk about her experience. So really, really excited to talk about that. Colleen, could you talk, if parents in India want more information, what should they do?
So they can reach out to us. The easiest way to get started is generally to send us a direct message on Instagram or Facebook, just because I see all of those and can make sure that Jagjit then sees them as well. But you can also email me directly. It's info at domaninternational.org. And I will then, get you in touch with Jagjit. And she's, as Spencer said, our regional director. She's a clinic staff member herself, and she has a tremendous amount of experience and a real passion for helping families of the region. So yeah, definitely reach out to us. We're going to get you connected with the right person. And we'd love to see you in the live on February 3rd, since it'll be India focused, as Spencer mentioned.
Yeah, and to that point, we've got a question here from Kirtika, and Kirtika just had a baby. Baby is 4 months old, Melissa and Colleen. And Kirtika says that baby was born premature, but seems to be healthy. And she's just wondering, what would we recommend for a baby in that situation? Seems to be well, doesn't seem to have any developmental issues, but born premature.
Well, I can answer it from my own experience. Now, I'm not a mother myself, but I have how many nephews and nieces do we have now? 5, 6?
Yeah.
5. Okay. But I having seen our nieces and nephews grow up, I think the two things that all of their parents did was they gave babies lots and lots of opportunity on the floor, on their belly. And they talked to them like they were little adults. There's no baby talk. There's no goo goo gaga stuff. It's like, we talk to you like you're one of us. And I can say with our oldest nephews, Caden and Liam, to a fault, like they're smart they're smart as a whip, incredibly sarcastic, like, again, kind of gets them in trouble sometimes, but, they've always done really, really well in school. Like they've always been super smart. And even our younger nephews, Jackson and Parker, like they got lots of floor time. They talk their heads off. They're just, as smart and as wonderful as can be. So, those are my 2 recommendations. And again, this is just coming from the professional aunt, I guess you could say, opinion, but that floor time, especially in those first few months of life, are absolutely crucial. Because, and going back to the reflex integration, like that's where it all happens. It all happens in that newborn time. And, by giving your baby simply just time on their tummy and floor opportunity, you are igniting something that is already programmed in your baby's brain, right? We're just starting the process sooner, faster. We're accelerating it through it more quickly.
Melissa and Colleen, if you're only able to advise one book to a parent of a baby, one book, what's the book you're recommending? We'll start with you, Colleen.
Ooh. I love how complete How Smart Is Your Baby is. It can be a little overwhelming though, I think, for new parents. So yeah, that's but it is really complete. I'd say that might be that, or the physical book, going on along what Melissa's saying. The physical book is going to, we need to give our babies much more opportunity than they naturally get, especially right now, because the tendency is, to of course, hold your baby, but the tendency is to have the baby in the car seat or the carrier or the stroller, and it means that you're just limiting baby's mobility all the time. And if they're not being given that opportunity, they're missing out on so much development. Also lung development. It's okay if they cry. They need to cry to get their energy up. And moms, we know the difference. I am a mother. We know the difference between that cry that says, "Oh my God, help me right now, get me out of this," and the cry that's like, that's effort. They're expending effort. So trust your gut If someone says your baby's crying, it's like, yeah, I know.
So yeah, so everyone, Colleen has recommended the books, How Smart Is Your Baby? That's by Glenn and Janet Doman. And then the book Fit Baby, Smart Baby, Your Baby, which is by Glenn and Douglas Doman. Melissa, you're allowed one other book. What are you recommending?
Colleen took the physical book from me.
Sorry, Melissa.
You only have 8 other Doman books to choose from. So.
Well, I do, I do think How Smart Is Your Baby is like, it's a great book because it goes over a little bit of everything from like what can I do with this little baby human thing that I have now? Because I think a lot of moms are like, well, all we do is feed and sleep. And then after 2 months, they're like, well, now what do I do? So, I think that's a really great book. And it also it outlines for parents like what to be looking for in that first year. So for this mom who has the 4-month-old who's a little bit premature, and that's okay. I mean, it happens, of course. I think that could be a really great tool for you to know like what's coming up down the line, what to expect, what should be happening. And just keep in mind, like we have, your baby is premature. So like we have to adjust that age a little bit. Just because they're chronologically 4 months, neurologically, they might be in a slightly different place because they just got here a little sooner than we all expected. So just keep that in mind. But I think How Smart Is Your Baby in that sense, gives the parents a lot of education around what should be happening,
I'd also like to nominate one more. Sorry, just for inspiration and also the idea of what Melissa was saying about talking to the nieces and the nephews like they're adults. We all know what that means, like at age level, but that we assume understanding even before they understand us, and we assume a high level of intelligence because we know that that's there. So yes, they're learning English, right? Or whatever language we speak at home, they're learning it, but we assume that they're going to be understanding it quickly, and we want to talk to them at that level, not blah, 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 blah. But How to Teach Your Baby to Read is the other book, because I think that is Glenn's voice is so inspiring in that book. His vision of children's intelligence is so clear, and I think as a parent, it could light that fire like, whoa, look, even if you never write a word card in your life for your kid, reading that book is going to make you look at them with that wonder of the potential that they have, their intelligence. So
How to Teach Your Baby to Read, I agree with you. I think it's my grandfather's greatest work written.
Yeah, it's just a good read. Yeah.
It is, yeah. One thing I wanted to add for really any parent out there, if you go to YouTube and you type in developmental milestones, understanding your child, just search that in YouTube. I have a free webinar that I'm actually quite proud of that kind of talks through what does normal development look like between birth and 6 years. And Kirtika, the reason why I recommend it for you is you mentioned your child is born premature. And especially if it's your first child, sometimes parents aren't sure what are the milestones to look for when a child is developing. So I really like this webinar because when you watch it, as you watch it, you might be ticking off all the boxes and saying, yep, he can do that. Yep, he can do that. Yep, great. And it'll give you reassurance. But also if, heaven forbid, there was some kind of developmental delay, it would help you know that as soon as possible. And then you know who to reach out to if you have any questions about that.
Spence, right, I'm going to pop the link for that in the chat box.
Oh, thank you. Great. Yeah. All right, everyone. So, Melissa, we've got a question here from Christy. She's asking, do we promote targeted, I think it's targeted nutritional intervention for kids with Down syndrome?
Sure. Yeah, that's a great question. And thank you for clarifying, because I found that, and then also something about nasal insufflation. I can't remember, but I was like, I'm pretty sure it's not that one. So to answer your question, the with regards to targeted nutritional intervention, I think like we do that with every kid on our program, not just our kids with Down syndrome, just because we've learned over the years that every child is very, very unique in what they need nutritionally, and what works for one kid with Down syndrome may not work for the other kid with Down syndrome, or what works for this child with autism may be a complete catastrophe for this other kid with autism. So, at Doman, now, granted, there are certain foods that we feel overall our kids benefit from having out of their diet. But from there, it is very specific. We have our families do certain lab tests, certain functional medicine testing, in order to figure out like exactly what foods, what supplements should they be taking, in order to make sure that that brain is well nurtured and it's getting the food and the nutrients that it needs to keep growing and thrive.
Great. Thanks, Melissa. Let's see. Let me go back. We were getting a lot of questions on Instagram. So Shaista is asking, how do you work on the sleep-wake cycle? My child sleeps at around 2 a.m. I'm currently doing the Doman Method program. Although his sleep quality has improved with the program, and we are seeing really good progress, he is 4 years old. There's a little bit more information I'll give you here, Melissa, from Shaista. She says, he follows a very strict routine, and it's very difficult to put him to sleep. And we're noticing that to avoid this situation, he becomes silly. Melissa, this is something we see a lot, right? He becomes silly, he starts laughing, he starts jumping on the bed. So that's Shaisa's question.
Yeah. So, okay. I'm going to do my best, because there's layers to this. Okay. So, I think with regards to your question about how to maybe get things earlier, I mean, first of all, we have to do our due diligence and make sure like we've got the right bedtime routine in place. We're stopping our Doman Method program at a certain point, because even though he's not ready to go to bed until 2 a.m. doesn't mean that we're doing program up until midnight or something like that. We need to start teaching the brain that there is a certain cutoff with certain activities, so that we can just start that wind down process sooner, faster, so we have a better shot of moving that sleep time up earlier. Okay. Now, one tool that I've used with a handful of Doman families, but I've used a lot as well outside of Doman with my sleep clients, is a light therapy box. A light therapy box is basically like a tablet sized thing that you put in your house. Now it's incredibly bright. It's mimicking sunlight inside the house. Now, it's a very, very simple tool, but very effective with trying to treat these kind of like night owl or morning lark circadian rhythms, where like, even if we have the best routine in place, the child's fully independent with their sleep, blah, 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 they're still not ready to go to bed until 2 a.m. We can use that light therapy box and expose the child to that light at certain times of the day to start retraining the brain. Like, no, buddy, this is when we're awake. No. This is when we're supposed to sleep. Okay. Now the protocol for it is very, very simple. The biggest question is like when and where to get it started, just based on how late, that sleep schedule is. But, and the great thing about it too is like, it's not like your child has to sit in front of it like this for 30 minutes. Like, they can eat breakfast, they can be watching TV, they can be doing other parts of their program. Like, as long as it's within a couple feet of them, great. Like, that's all we need. But it's a very, very strong and intense message that's going through that optic nerve directly to the brain to say, we need to be up right now, or we need to be sleeping right now. And it does take some time. I would say, like, on average, some families will see results sooner, but on average, I think parents see changes within 4 to 6 weeks of using it. But like I said, we got to start with an anchor point, and gradually that schedule becomes earlier and earlier and earlier as we're literally shifting that circadian rhythm earlier. So Shaista, I think if you haven't done so already, maybe reach out to your staff coach to get some more information on how to use the light therapy box. I'm the person on staff who can schedule it and make up a protocol, of course, but I think at least just get in touch with your staff coach and see, if we can get that organized. Okay.
Great. Thanks, Melissa. And we got, Kritika had said, please mention in the comments, please. So Kritika, what I did was I put all the recommended books that we mentioned in the prior question in the Instagram comments. And I also put the name of the recommended video just to learn more about children's milestones. Melissa Shaista says, thank you. Melissa, did you touch on, I'm sorry if I missed this, because I was typing out the names. Did you talk about the hyperactivity at bedtime and what that means?
Oh yeah, no, that's a good one. Yeah.
Yeah, like when kids get kind of silly and hyperactive.
Yeah, sorry. I was like, I know I was missing something. So look, typically when we see that kind of overexcitement at bedtime, it's usually a sign that we've kind of missed our window to go to sleep. Okay. So, in our circadian rhythm, like it goes up and down like this throughout the day. And that biggest dip, the lowest dip that our circadian rhythm takes is at nighttime when we're supposed to go to sleep. Okay. Now, for kids, like it's really important that we take advantage of that window of opportunity because it allows us to put the child to sleep where they're going to fall asleep faster. All of the other body rhythms are moving in sync with that circadian rhythm. And we're actually able to like even extend the sleep later, longer, whatever, right? So when we've missed that window, what happens is like the circadian rhythm actually starts to go back up again. But for a lot of kids, it becomes like this overtired, we're running on steam, or running on fumes, like hyperactivity, like can't settle back to sleep. And again, it's because, and they've shown this on functional MRIs, like the areas of the brain that start to get disorganized and overactive when we're sleep deprived and in debt and all of that are these like back areas of the brain here, which is where the pineal gland is, sensory processing, behavior, balance, and coordination, like all of those things. So that area of the brain is starting to go haywire when we're in that sleep debt or we've missed that window. So I think it's really important, Shaista, like if you haven't done so already, you want to start making note of when is that uptick in behavior, or more importantly, when do you notice that your child is actually starting to get kind of calm and quiet for the night? Now, for some kids, it could be like this big of a window, which I know is really tough, but you want to be hyper observant about it because chances are like that's the goal we need to get to with, moving bedtime, whatever that might look like.
Thanks, Melissa. And, I just want to make a quick note to everyone who's here right now, because we're getting a lot of great questions. If you're brave, we bring parents onto this webinar live. And you can join us up here on video and ask us any question that you want. And some of the people that we're bringing on, like Melissa, are very much desired, by parents around the world to ask them questions. So if you're feeling brave, you can sign up. On our Instagram stories, we're constantly posting a link where you can sign up. You could join this live and ask your questions in person. And one of the nice things about that is you can often ask more than one question at a time. You can even ask follow-up questions, and that's very nice. Okay, let's see what else we've got here. All right, we've got a question here, Melissa, from Jennifer. And Jennifer is saying, is sleep apnea common with brain injury? My son is 6 months old, and he wakes up all night long. He has been diagnosed with cerebral palsy.
Yeah. It's a great question. And yes, there's something called central sleep apnea, which is more like neurological sleep apnea. There's obstructive sleep apnea, where, as it says in the title, like there's something obstructing the breathing, where central sleep apnea, there's maybe something more neurological going on. Not to say there isn't any obstruction. There could also be obstruction, but there it's more indicative of like maybe something more neurological. Now, as you said, Jennifer, your little guy is only 6 months old. My suspicion is that it's probably not a sleep apnea related issue. Not ruling it out completely. My guess is that, and I know this just because I've worked with quite a few babies with this diagnosis at this age. In my experience, it's a sign of like a retained Moro reflex or a startle reflex. So for a lot of babies at this age with CP, they have a very hard time processing the positional changes. So, we've kind of fallen asleep up here on our shoulder. Then I go get to put down, mom goes to put me down. And then like we have these kind of movements, these startle movements that wake them up and start the process over again. The same thing happens though when they're actually asleep for the night as well. Like that Moro reflex can start to like be a little overactive, or even like little tiny sounds in the environment create that startle response. And then like mom's got to go back in and she's got to start the process over and over and over and over and over again. So, what I would recommend is actually during the day, maybe work on some balance activities. So both in the Fit Baby book and How Smart Is Your Baby, which we mentioned earlier, it goes over the first steps of balance development and providing balance stimulation for babies. And it's really simple. It's like, you get a couch cushion, put your baby on their stomach on the couch cushion. You just like move them around left, right, spin them around in circles. But that's one very simple way for us to start integrating that Moro reflex. So that way, when you're putting them down in the crib at night or when they're sleeping at night, they're less and less likely to have these kind of startles and wakes up. Okay. Now there's also a whole element of like starting to encourage independent sleep and all of that. But, like I said, just based on my own experience, not saying that sleep apnea is not there, it could be, but my suspicion is probably it's more just immature reflexes that have yet to be integrated.
All right. Thank you, Melissa. All right. Kirtika, if you're hearing us now, I reposted those comments in case you lost them. Let's see, Melissa. We might have gotten. Oh, there's a question here about adenoids.
Yeah.
How to help kids with adenoids for mouth breathing.
Okay. So I'm guessing the question is like if the adenoids are enlarged or too big.
That's my guess. Yeah.
Okay. So look, it's very, very seldom that I would suggest like surgery to take them out. Like they have to be absolutely ginormous, like to warrant taking them out. And that's simply just because the adenoid is an immune defense system. It's our filtration system. So everything that we're breathing in, whether it's environmental pollutants, illnesses, whatever, it goes through that adenoid, and the adenoid is kind of like just trying to stop from getting sick. And sometimes it does great. Other times it, misses the mark, and that's okay. It's all right, adenoid. But that being said, like, if there is adenoid inflammation or if there's tonsil inflammation, again, let's go to that root cause. What's causing that inflammation in the system? Are there certain foods that are inflammatory? Are we not getting enough anti-inflammatory foods? Are there certain supplements that we need to be using in order to try and reduce the size of those adenoids? Because again, that inflammation or that enlargement is an inflammatory response, right? So, it's really, really important that we try to address it that way first, which is like, no question, it's a longer term, it's a longer runway way of going about it. But if we can avoid the surgery, if we can keep that immune wall, that immune system wall there and in place, like your child's going to be all the better for it. But like I said, like in rare cases when they're just like to the point where the child like really, really can't breathe. Okay. Like maybe we have to do some kind of surgery to take them out or to shave them down or something like that. But again, our goal is to try and avoid that at all costs and get down to the root of the issue to get that inflammatory response down.
Okay, Melissa, we have a follow-up comment from Jennifer, who asked about sleep apnea before. She's just saying thank you. She has an appointment at Doman International in 2 weeks. So,
Oh, right. Okay. Yeah, now I'm recognizing the last name. Cool. All right.
yeah,
See you soon.
yeah, and the great thing is, Jennifer, a lot of the different parts of the program can help sleep, whether it is the respiratory program helping breathing, whether it's the physical program, because physical activity is great for inducing, better quality deep sleep. Whether it's the sensory stimulation and cognitive programs, cognitive stimulation, again, very good for sleep, nutrition. So in many ways, the whole program is beneficial for sleep.
Yeah.
All right. Annabella Melissa is asking, what is your opinion about red light to help inflammation for our ASD, autism spectrum disorder kids, like red light therapy?
Yeah, it's a great question. And I mean, I know about it from like a physical rehabilitation standpoint, like, for sore muscles or arthritis and stuff like that, it can be very beneficial. We've had families who have done iterations of red light therapy or like, targeted laser therapy. Now it could have just been the methods that they've used. Like I felt like, responses were kind of like hit or miss. Again, it is targeting the brain, but that being said, like it's not the be all end all. It might be a good like supplemental technique or thing to do with your child, but it's,
Yeah.
but other than
And
that,
I
like from a
think,
neurological standpoint, I'm need to read up more on it.
yeah, and I'm by no means an expert. But I think red light therapy is quite different from like the targeted laser therapies
Right?
that
Yeah.
exist.
Yeah.
And like you, Melissa, I know red light therapy because mostly of its anti-inflammatory properties. I know certain people that, for example, they have saunas with red light therapy and they swear by it. But I don't think I have enough information or experience to really talk about, like, to recommend it to families.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, and it's also one of those areas like, because again, I've looked into it for myself for like my arthritis and all sorts of pains and all of that. It's not cheap. So like we also, sometimes like parents will tell us like, oh, this is really great. And it's like $5,000 for a home unit. It's like, is it for the results? Is it like really worth that? It's
Well, yeah,
always a big
and
question.
we have a kind of a Doman International test where it's like if 2 to 3 families on our program recommend something and they say like, hey guys, this really helped our kid, we'll look
Yeah.
into it. But I have to be honest, not a single parent has come to me yet to say red light therapy helped their child. So that doesn't mean it doesn't work. It just means I haven't heard that yet. And our parents tend to be very vocal when something works. They're like, this works, and I say, okay, let me learn. And we've added things to the program because of that. So I think we need to wait and learn more. All right. Annabella, if you have an opinion or experience, I'd love to hear from you.
Yeah.
Okay. Well, Melissa, I don't see any other questions here. In terms of mobility development, specifically for special needs children,
Yeah.
what would be the book you would recommend?
Well, it certainly depends on your child's level of mobility. If your child is below their age level when it comes to their mobility, so they're not yet reaching milestones or their milestones are delayed compared to their peer level, I would recommend looking into Immobility to Mobility. That's the name of the book, right? Yes. Okay.
Right.
Sorry. There's a lot of books, like we said. Sometimes it's like the Seven Doors. We're gonna miss one. So, so I definitely recommend Immobility to Mobility for that reason, because it like paves that pathway of like, oh, okay, your kid's here. This is what you're gonna do. This is what you're gonna do. This is what you're gonna do to close that gap. Now, if your child is walking and running already, depending on their diagnosis, you can either read the Doman Method book, From Special Needs to Wellness, or Answering Autism. And that Answering Autism book is specifically for kids on the spectrum, but can be very helpful for kids with ADHD, sensory processing disorder, stuff like that too.
Okay, two last questions that came in, Melissa. We'll do this like a lightning round. Sandra's asking, what is your opinion about cranial sacral therapy and chiropractics?
Oh, it's good stuff. Yeah. Good stuff. Absolutely. Especially for kids who are like teething and stuff like that. Like, find a craniosacral therapist, because you know what? Teething is like the number one wrench in the works for a Doman Method program. Like, get it handled, get things opened up. And chiropractics is great too. I have quite a few kids on the program with like hip dysplasia issues and stuff like that. And that one chiropractic adjustment can like really set them up for like a month of great program before things everything kind of like shifts back into place or where it's not supposed to be. So in that sense, like they're both really, really great supplemental things to have for your Doman program.
Yeah, I really look at chiropractics as a wonderful lifestyle activity.
Exactly.
I do like to manage parents' expectations in the sense that, sometimes I'll hear claims that, okay, if you go and get your child adjusted, your child will, have some kind of amazing developmental spurt. I have to be honest, I don't usually recommend chiropractics necessarily as a brain rehabilitation program, but rather because a lot of kids with neurological issues have peripheral issues, like Melissa mentioned, hip issues. Sometimes they have back or neck issues.
Sometimes you have a child who's just like, a pinball machine, just like throwing themselves upside down on a couch and jumping off of things. Like, get them adjusted.
Yeah. Okay, we got a question here from Laura, and Laura, I'll give you like the 30-second answer to this because we answered it earlier. You could watch a longer answer before. Laura's asking about primitive reflexes. We mentioned, Laura, that primitive reflexes can be helpful as a supplement to the Doman method, but not a replacement, because we said that we haven't really found that it helps children reach major physical milestones on its own. In other words, if you've got a child who doesn't yet crawl, creep, walk, or run, I don't think we feel that's going to be the difference maker based on our experience with kids.
Yeah.
But in the Doman method, we incorporate various primitive reflexes that we feel are important. So, and I would recommend for anyone who's brand new to the program, check out our book, The Doman Method, From Special Needs to Wellness. I don't have a copy next to me, but I will type it in. While I'm typing the name of the book, Colleen, do you mind just telling people how they can learn more about us and reach out and get into contact?
Absolutely. So yes, we have representatives all over the world. So odds are if English is not your native language, we might have a representative. We have in Italy, we have a Latin American representative, Serbia, Russia, and India. And you can get in touch with us directly. You can always send a direct message through Instagram or Facebook. I get all of those. So if you're an English-speaking parent, you'll talk to me. Or if you're in India, I will refer you to Jagjit and get you in touch with the right rep for your region. You can also email me directly. It's info, INFO, @domaninternational.org, and that's my direct email. So I see those every morning, all through the day. We are a worldwide organization, but we're actually a relatively small staff. So odds are, a parent actually said to me the other day, "Oh, I was so impressed because I had been talking to you in email, and then you were on the live, and then she's like, so you're all just like real people, and you're the ones talking to us. I said, yeah, we don't have a phone bank or anything like that. It's us. So yeah, please reach out directly. Any questions that you have. The Doman Method has been around for 70 years. We have a tremendous amount of experience and information to share with you. So I hope you get in touch with us.
Okay, so you can see there I've put Colleen's email address, and I'm about to put the name of the book up. Now, Melissa, I've decided, because I was watching someone else's show, and they always end off their show by asking the same question to every person who comes on. So you're going to be the first person to get this question. So you'll be the only person to ever come on who won't be prepared for it.
Great.
So
Thanks. Really appreciate that.
So my question for you is going to be, can you tell me the story of one child with special needs who changed your outlook on life? Okay. That their story or their progress changed your outlook on life. Now, while you're thinking about that question, I'm going to share for everyone, the first book about our program. If you want to learn more about the Doman Method, it's called The Doman Method from Special Needs to Wellness. I wrote this with my dad, Douglas Doman. So if you go to Amazon and you just type in the Doman Method, it will be the first book that will pop up. All right, Melissa, can you think of a kid with special needs that, was on the Doman Method who changed your outlook on life? It could be a child who had a lot of progress, or some child you learned something from, or just changed your outlook.
Yeah. There is a kid that comes to mind, and I really hope I get his name right. Yeah. Okay. So when Spencer and I were kids, we went to school together. We were, so we were in the school that his grandfather started. And from time to time, we would have kids with special needs come up to our classroom from the clinic. Like, they would get to join us and we would learn from them. And I think for me, the first kid that really made an impact on me was Sean. Sean was a nonverbal child on the program, but I mean, an absolute whiz with facilitated communication. And like, as an 11, 12-year-old, I was just like, what is this? And like, my mom, who was in the school at the time, would always say, like, us kids, like when we were there, it was just like the kid from the clinic was always just like one of us, There was another kid once, Jefferson, who came up, and he had like the top of the line, like Mac laptop. And we were all like, oh my God, we're so jealous of Jefferson. And this is an immobile kid in a wheelchair. And we were like, this kid has the raddest like MacBook. And I know that sounds so silly, but like, I think kids like Sean and Jefferson, like they changed my outlook. And Spencer and I were in an interview not too long ago, and I was talking about how like, I just kind of took advantage of like, oh, that's just like what happens with kids with special needs. And when I left the school and when I was out in the real world, I guess you could say, the stark contrast was like, no, not every child has that opportunity to be able to express themselves so fully like Sean, and for Jefferson just to have the access to the program and to the things that he needs to communicate his thoughts and feelings and stuff like that. So I think for me, Sean and Jefferson were definitely two kids that really stood out.
I'm really glad you brought them up, because those two, Sean, as Melissa said, was, a teenager with autism, and Jefferson was, young teenager
with CP,
cerebral palsy. Exactly. And Sean, both of them would type to communicate because they learned how to type, at their Doman Method appointments. And one of the amazing things is they came into our class, and we quickly realized, I think the reason why they had such a big impact on us is they were the smartest kids in the class. Yeah. And so we would,
you're like, oh no. All right.
It was humbling. It was humbling because the math teacher would ask us a question and we'd all like turn to Sean or Jefferson to answer, and they would type the answer before we could come up with it. And I agree with you. It really taught us to respect kids, even if they have trouble talking. And you could
Yeah.
really see their innate intelligence. So that's a
Yeah.
great answer. See,
Thank
I
you.
know there's a reason why I asked it. Okay, everyone, thanks so much for joining. Your questions have been fantastic. And Melissa, thanks so much for joining us. By the way,
Yeah.
next week, Morgan Doman, my sister's going to be joining. Morgan is a life coach. She's also a member of the Doman Method, the Doman International Clinical Team. So she'll be giving parents advice on how to be the best parents that they can be. All right, Melissa and Colleen, thanks so much. Have a great
Thank
rest of your
you.
day.
Thanks.
See
Bye-bye.
you.
Yeah.
Bye.